So, as Amanda said, we're going to look at the subject of jobs and transitioning workforces, planning and seizing opportunities in the Hunter region over coming decades. So we had a little get-together online a couple of weeks ago to identify a few areas of discussion, which we'll drill down into now. And I hope you find it an engaging and interesting experience. So the first subject is, of course, does the Hunter have a skills shortage? And I think we've thoroughly identified that it does. But following on from that, I'd like to, well, first of all, ask each of our panellists just to quickly introduce yourself in terms of how this subject relates to your sector. So, Leigh, if you would like to start.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Good morning, everybody. I'm Leigh Stefanszyn from Ampcontrol. Really passionate topic for us at the moment. Not only are we living day in, day out the skill shortage, we're also living a labour shortage. And I think it's really important to differentiate that, you know, they're two separate things. Ampcontrol employ around, or just under 900 people across Australia. In the Hunter, we've got just under 700 people. And we are constantly looking for people to join our team, and we are constantly challenged by the battles and the barriers that we've got in place at the moment. So hats off to Hunter Business. It's been a fantastic seminar so far, and I'm really excited that there's so many people and so much passion to actually solve this, because the window of opportunity is here right now, and it's really great to see so many people are committed to solving right now. So very close to my heart.
Good day everyone, my name is Mark Apthorpe. I'm New South Wales' first ever electricity infrastructure jobs advocate. One hell of a long title. I've got to have a longer card now. But my role is an independent role working with the New South Wales government and all the other entities to try and make sure we maximise the jobs outcomes in the transition to renewables in New South Wales as they roll out the electricity infrastructure roadmap. So I'm been talking to lots of people in all different businesses, all the government entities and all the business organisations to find out what are the things we should be doing. Thank you.
Good morning everybody. Use my one? Use one, not Pulling it down, apologies. My name's Andy Leadbeatter, Managing Director of Reclaim Solar Energy. I too share Leigh's passion. It's something that has really struck me in the last couple of years in particular. I grew up in Melbourne, but moved up here about 15 years ago, and I love Newcastle, love the Hunter, incredibly passionate about making it work and being in the renewables industry, especially solar. I see a massive future for the Hunter Valley, and the skills shortage is put it this way, we're looking all over the place for it. So I'm looking forward to being a part of as many groups as I can be, and supporting people like Mark in particular around bringing that roadmap to fruition and supporting whoever needs support, because our industry relies upon it massively if we want to grow at all. So.
Hi, my name's Mark Chilcote. Managing Director of Energy Renaissance. So we're new to the region. We established here in the region last October. In October of this year, we'll open the first gigafactory in Australia. So our core business is manufacturing lithium-ion batteries. One of the main reasons for picking the Hunter region as our home is the skill base, both at technical and trade level. University of Newcastle, and we do a lot of work with CSIRO, so obviously all three are represented here. So over the next couple of years we'll grow from, we're a fairly modest 15 at the moment in a temporary facility, we'll grow to about 270 in the next couple of years, and as I say, it's a cross-section of professional engineering, chemists, technical staff and trades-based staff.
Hello everyone, my name's Clare Sykes, and I'm here today representing New H2, which is the Hunter Hydrogen Technology Cluster, and also Resources New South Wales. So I guess the role of the cluster is really about bringing about coordination, working with various stakeholders that are navigating both industry growth, so the project proponents, but also industry participation, and also working with research institutes in terms of accelerating innovation and commercialisation of new energy technologies, and also working across workforce and skills. So it's fantastic that we're having these conversations because many of the technologies that we are going to sort of embrace in the future are still emerging, and the skills conversation needs to happen as part of that. It's a conversation that's happening across the country. That New H2 is part of the National Cluster Network. There's a range of activities happening, but are they happening fast enough? And I think driving forward these conversations here in the Hunter will really give a leading edge, I think, in terms of navigating the workforce skills challenge that's facing us.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashden Saege. I'm the Commercial Manager from the Port of Newcastle. I'm here to talk about a little bit my role. So I'm leading the energy projects, with the key one being the hydrogen hub and the broader energy precinct. The port in general, we have a lot of vacant land. We might be one of the world's biggest bulk ports but we still have, I think, 700 hectares of land to be developed, which is quite amazing, and a utilised channel. So further developments means more capabilities for the region, more jobs, and a key one that we're focusing on is obviously hydrogen and green ammonia production, but also facilitating that broader industry participation. And having that an open platform for the industry to sort of grow here in the region.
Thank you, everyone. So moving on to our first topic, which is skills shortage. We're here today, often yesterday, talking about the skills shortage, but in some ways it's a nuanced issue, and I'm interested to get a couple of your thoughts about whether or not you feel it applies equally across the board in the clean energy sector. So Ashden, could you basically tell us quickly what are the specific areas that you feel as though the skills shortage applies to in your role?
Sure. It might be a little bit early where we are at the moment, so we're very much in that development feasibility stage of what we're looking at. But when we talk with the University of Newcastle and TAFE, there is an existing workforce, and it's just understanding what is that potential future vision going to be, where are the gaps, how do we fill that gaps in terms of as we scale up. So are we looking at initially micro credential short courses, then leveraging into those longer term programs. The port at the moment, we're probably a relatively small organisation in terms of employees, so I think we have around 120 staff, but we will be building out an initial team now, and obviously setting up a new entity, to support the hydrogen project. But we sort of see, at our end, construction's going to be a big a real big need for our developments, and obviously the construction industry at the moment is under a lot of pressure. There's going to be the need for that wholesale retail trade, and also the support around professional, technical, and that science as you build this industry, and then moving from that, there's going to be a strong need around hydrogen, gas, the chemical side, the whole distribution supply chain component as well, so the production to getting it to the end users. That's probably enough from me. But
thank you. Andy, you and I spoke a few weeks ago about some of the challenges in your industry. Can you quickly run through some of those issues?
Yeah, sure. So Reclaim Solar Energy, just to give you a little bit of context, we're based in Edgeworth, family-owned, small company. Through the networks that we've generated through some of our employees in Newcastle, in particular with HunterNet, we've been introduced to the Wild West of New South Wales, which is an incredible growth area and a lot of grow and expand over time. We want to start working out in these regions, and in the conversations we've had, and this is not news probably to anyone. The conversations we've had with, say, a company that we're dealing with in Narrabri, for example, there are no solar installers in Narrabri. No, I don't think there's a gap. But I think, look at how many electricians are there, and this is an energy company on the main street of Narrabri. There's 2, 3 maybe, and they're 50, 60 years old. You think, far out, like kids have to travel 2 hours to TAFE from Narrabri to be an electrician. I want to hire those kids because they're amazing if they're doing 4 hours of travel a day to become an electrician. So there is a shortage in regional areas where the Hunter, here in Newcastle, will benefit massively from what happens west of here. All the ports, all of the productions that's coming back through Newcastle, the supply chains, everyone's going to benefit from what happens out west. And at the moment, I see a massive gap there. And for me, I've got a company, families in my company, saying you've got 900, I don't definitely have that many, but you look at who you're trying to support. We need to grow all the time, and we can't grow without the right people. I spoke to, I'll keep this as brief as I can, but this is showing the gap from my perspective. I just spoke to Taj, who's he's just become fully qualified electrician. I said, did you look at renewables in the 4 years you're at TAFE? Never. An electrician just finished 4 years of TAFE and didn't look at renewables. I asked Bert, who's just going into his second year, have a look at your forecast. Is there anything in there around renewables? Nothing. I'm happy to be corrected on that, but that's their perception of things. So I think there's the next 4 years, we're still not going to have anyone coming out of TAFE as an electrician who's keen on renewables. So there's something there that can be really corrected quite quickly. I think it's but it needs to be engaged and understood. The diversification of Newcastle and the wider region will rely on these small courses that we're talking about. Just need to put their toe in the water and get these young people excited about the energy future here in Newcastle, because it's huge. And we have the opportunity, we're talking about opportunities in this section, the biggest opportunity probably of any region in Australia to really be aggressive in this space and become a leader. And at the moment, from my perspective, and fairly limited from my perspective, there's some gaps there that I'm pretty passionate about addressing.
Yeah, we're going to move on to education and training in a couple of minutes. But before we get there, just wanting to quickly look at future careers and how the skills demographic is changing. Leigh, I was just wondering, in your role, if you've got a bit of a handle on what you expect a typical skilled young person to look like maybe in 10, 15 years' time who's applying for a job at Ampcontrol?
Yeah, okay. So just going back to where we were talking around the educational piece, I think it's really important. We're all fighting the same fight at the moment with having the shortage, and it's that awareness of what is it, where is the economy moving to, and understanding and making sure people are aware to be advocates of what skills, what competence is required. Otherwise, we're not going to seize the opportunity because we're not going to have the young people who have identified that they're actually going to need to increase their competence for that. And yesterday we heard about the educational pathways and where does the responsibility sit? And I don't think it's one individual, it's not even two groups. There are so many different people and so many different groups and roles that people need to play. And from an Ampcontrol perspective, we really start in the schools and we create that awareness in the schools, because we see that as the first opportunity. And sure, there's a good time to actually, from a student to complete their competence, their apprenticeship, it might be 5-6 years, but we feel if we can create that awareness and that education of where the energy economy is going, we can create that excitement, and that's really important. But until we all start advocating that we've got a skill set here, but we need to transition that, and we're all advocating for that, I think we're still going to see, the challenges that we've just had raised here.
Sure.
So from a skill set in the next 10 years, I think it'll look different, but also the same. So we're still going to be using a lot of the similar skills that we've got. We're still going to need electricians, we're still going to need engineers, but I think there's going to be a real tech edge on all of those skills, and so it's up to us as an industry to identify, what that skill set is, and make sure that our education pathways and our competence skill sets can actually accommodate that, because otherwise we're still going to be behind, the 8 ball at that point in time.
Okay. Mark, in the work that you're doing as the electricity jobs advocate, would you agree with that?
Yep, sure. So I guess my role is a state role. There's 5 renewable energy zones, New England, Central West Orana, Hunter, Central Coast, Southwest and Illawarra. And so I've been around most of them talking to people, and the sort of things that Andy's saying, Lou's saying, I'm hearing everywhere. One of the things that has been consistently said to me, which I didn't think would be part of the role, is we've got to push back into the high schools. We've got to actually start to let people know there are these new careers, there are these new opportunities, because right at the moment they've got no idea. And if you go to industry careers days, there's none of the information being provided to kids about what are all these new careers in all these new industries. So that's one area that I think we really need to push.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Can I just share a personal story around that exact point? And I don't think it's this isn't solely the career advisors, concern, it's an industry concern, and it's about the education piece. But my godson came 7th in New South Wales for engineering. He did his HSC last year, 7th in the state. So had a plethora of opportunities that he wanted to do. Chose he wanted to do engineering. So I think he's gone on to do civil now. But when I was talking to him and congratulating him on his fantastic results, I asked him, so what about renewable? What about renewable engineering? What's your interest in that? He said, haven't really had any opportunity to look at that. And I was really taken back by the fact that, there hadn't been any exposure for him to even look at that as a consideration. So he went into, probably one of the most traditional forms of engineering.
Yep.
And great, fantastic. We're still going to need civil engineers, absolutely. But it's about creating that awareness so that, these young kids can see that there's an opportunity moving forward. So
Yeah.
I thought that was just
Thank
a
you,
really interesting personal story.
Claire, I was just going to ask you.
Can I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
As well? Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it is very much around perception of young young people. We need to be working at the school level to start to bring the narrative around the exciting careers and opportunities that are, in front of our young people for mining, energy, resources, future energy technologies, renewables, etc., because it is all part of the story of how industry will grow here in the Hunter. I wanted to share that, for instance, mining engineering, there's a lot happening at the national level to try and grow critical mineral processing, value-added downstream processing, etc. There were, in the leading mining school in Australia, two registered to join mining engineering. And you think that is, for such a critical industry in Australia, that's remarkable. And then, yesterday's comment as well around female participation, that, female engineering streams at the University of Newcastle has the lowest participation rate in the state. And that is something that has to be addressed for such a leading industrial centre, and with so much opportunity in terms of future future energy industries as well. And also it is about sharing the narrative and promoting the opportunities in the industry. I mentioned this morning my experience last week in going underground at Cobar, and there was a world first electric vehicle being trialled, 1 kilometre underground, technicians, apprentices working on that, building fast charging stations, and that opportunity, sort of bridging that gap between an extractive process like mining, but actually they're working on world-leading technology. That if you can be building fast charging stations 1 kilometre underground, you sure can be doing it above ground. And I think these are the opportunities that we need to be showcasing, changing the perception around, looking at the whole industry, both the extraction all the way through to battery technologies, value, downstream value adding, and renewable energy in one piece.
No, thank you, Claire. We've already segued into our next area of discussion, which is the education and training sector meeting the needs of our region? And Mark, you've got the microphone there, and your company is relatively new to our region. I was just wondering what you make of the education and training sector as it relates to Energy Renaissance, and do you feel as though it's helping you attract the skilled people that you need?
Yeah, good question. As I said before, we're new. We're the first lithium-ion manufacturer in Australia, so we can't find skills that suit, hand in glove what we require. Not out of college, not out of trade schools, or not out of industry. So we have to concede that we're going to reskill. We've currently got all of our trade-based people are ex-miners, come out of the mining industry. All electricians. We've reskilled them and they're absolutely brilliant. So they've got all the base underlying skills. We've got a young lady electrician that's decided to go more into a technician's role. So we've trained her up on computer communications. She's doing all of our diagnostics of the batteries out in the field. So she's taken it to like a duck to water. So because she's got the underlying skills qualification, then we found it really easy to reskill her.
Can I just ask a question there? Did you train her yourself, or did she get micro credentials through TAFE to do that?
No. She's trade qualified electrician.
Right.
She had an interest in it, so she gravitated towards that part of the job. As I said before, we do a lot of work with CSIRO, so she's actually in CSIRO today, but she spent a lot of time with the CSIRO engineers being upskilled, being trained in it. It's been all on-the-job training, 100% on-the-job training, and her role will grow, and then she'll become the champion of that skill as we grow, so she'll then re-educate. We've also got a young environmental engineer undergrad that's working as an intern, and so she's got the base skill. Obviously, she's picked up from college, but she's dealing with things like the EPA and local regulations, and it's new to them as well. So she's learning at the same time as she's teaching, industry for our permitting. So for us, we're in a bit of a honeymoon stage where we haven't seen the skill shortage. We're a bit new and shiny, so if we put an ad out there, we get a lot of applicants, and we're recruiting for attitude rather than necessarily skill, because we can't find the skill. We're going to have to bring in 2 or 3 external resources from overseas to bring in the actual manufacturing skill in about the next 6 months, but our intention is that'll be very short term. We'll put them beside, local trades or local engineers for skills transfer. So yeah, and the lithium-ion battery manufacturing, it's more akin to pharmaceuticals. So we're in a complete dry room, high levels of filtration, and you hear about these battery fires. A lot of battery fires are caused by impurities introduced during the manufacturing process. So it's critical that that's incredibly clean. very high tech too, so it's full robotics. So I think you mentioned it before, the base skills are the same. We just need to reskill and, I'd like to, in time we'll see it come through the universities, but I think there's a few years before we see, university degrees in lithium-ion battery manufacture, but yeah.
Okay. Leigh, I was just wondering if you might be able to give some thoughts about whether or not you feel as though the existing education and training resources in our region are appropriately allocated to meet the needs of industry.
That's a hot topic, right?
It is.
Look, there's a lot of resources to educational pathways. Do we have enough of those at this point in time? No, probably not. And to Mark's point, it's really interesting to hear that there's a real hybrid approach being taken to that upskilling. And I think that's what the educational institutions need to actually deliver against, because not one pathway is going to suit everybody, and not one pathway is going to suit every single skill set. We're probably operating, a dozen different streams of pathways and career road mapping to upskill our people, dependent on what that basic capability is and what that basic competence is, and then how we actually continue that. I think there's, and I'm not quite sure of the exact title, but from a government perspective, there's 25 representatives that sit around the state, looking at educational pathways and what needs to actually, be done to improve that. Is 25 enough at this current time? No, probably not. We probably need to accelerate that and add more resources, if we could find the resources, of course. But we would find benefit, in having more resource allocated to that.
Yep.
And I sit here and, we can all sit and talk about the quandary that we're in, but I think as an organisation you need to take some ownership of that, as well. And it sounds like, Mark's just shared the different things that he's doing, which is great. And we're doing a lot of those things, as well. And we've got a program called Grow Your Own internally, and it's really about identifying our individuals' capabilities and then looking at different opportunities to upskill them. So that provides fantastic career development opportunities for our people in-house, and then also helps us to retain our talent, because that's just as critical as finding the talent at this point. So it's certainly a hybrid approach. And I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. And just further to that, I was really excited to hear yesterday with the university putting more emphasis on work-integrated learning. So we do a lot with the University of Newcastle particularly, and we're starting to branch out further across the state as well. But we have a number of work-integrated learning opportunities at Ampcontrol, but that is going to become a requirement for all undergraduates, I think in the next 2 years, or maybe even a year. Claire, you might be able to confirm that. But
it's 2024.
2024? Yeah, so that is fantastic, because 2023, fantastic, even better. Thank you. Which is fantastic, because that on-the-job experience then just allows people to broaden their horizon so that they can see what skill they'd like to develop, and it also opens the opportunity for more people to upskill. So well done, Newcastle University. I think that's a fantastic way forward, and I think that's going to really contribute to helping, helping to understand what the skills are, so that we can actually meet that deficiency.
Sure.
It's really exciting.
Andy, I was just wondering, in your circumstance, do you feel as though there are adequate pathways for people wanting to upskill or upgrade their existing qualifications to work in renewables in the areas that you need them?
Yeah, it's getting better, but it's still got a bit of work to be done. I think I said before, I don't think it's hard to implement the changes, but I'm not anyone to affect that change myself directly. A good case in point, we had an employee, electrician, wanted to get his solar accreditation. He'd been doing solar for a period of time. Very good technician. He had to go down to Sydney and do a week's worth of prac, which wasn't too bad. And then he had to sit some online stuff, and he was done. He's got his solar accreditation. It's pretty easy, really, when you think about it, from Newcastle.
Yeah.
Why isn't there somewhere in Newcastle where you can do that training? And I spoke to the trainer down in Sydney. His name's Bill Gammon, runs Skill Build. He's a brilliant educator, and he said he put advertised in Newcastle for expressions of interest to see whether he could actually physically run a training centre out of Newcastle, and there was no one. And I thought, wow, okay, there you go. We definitely have a shortfall of interest or education or awareness around where this region is heading. That's a huge thing that I don't know how many people are even applying for these jobs or these roles, but I know I need them. There are plenty of companies that are going to need them. So that concerned me. I think online learning can be done and can be really effective if done well. And practical days, even if it's Sydney, I'd go to Albury, wherever you have to go to get that 1-2 practical days in. Online learning, I think, is a tool that we can use for the interim, but we should be leading education if this is going to be the direction the hunt is going in. One of the directions, especially with energy, we need to be training people here and keeping people here and attracting people into the region to be educated to work in this region.
Okay, Mark, I was just wondering if you might be able to comment on what Andy said there about the training situation.
Yep, sure. So as I've gone around and spoken to lots of businesses, including Andy's, quite frankly, no, we don't in the Hunter actually have what we need to deliver. In fact, we don't across all the energy zones I've been in. We need a lot more done. We have a real mismatch at the moment. We don't have courses offered in the areas. If I go to the TAFE, for example, we don't have courses offered where they're really needed at the moment. So there's also a need. I've heard from the Industry Training Board that we need to actually have some investment in the TAFE teachers themselves and getting people in there and upgrading the skills so they actually understand where the world's up to. A lot of them did their trade at a certain time and the world has moved on, and especially in renewables, so there's a lot to be done there. We do have in New South Wales, training services are running, there's a number of different studies. They're doing quite a detailed one at the moment that in a couple of months we'll have really solid facts about where are the demands going to be, but more importantly, where are the training not available to fill those demands.
Sure.
So that's happening to find all that. I guess one last thing in my little soapbox is that here at the university we used to have a major in supply chain logistics, and we don't have anymore. And one of the biggest things for all the big renewable energy construction projects, logistics is huge. And so we'd love to see that sort of get a bit more of a focus back in the uni.
Okay. Moving along, Claire, I was just wondering, in your experience, what do you feel about the consultation that exists between education training providers and the industry in terms of meeting the needs? Do you feel as though there's enough consultation? Could it be better?
I think, consultation it definitely exists, but I think what we need to start looking at now is what do we need for the future. So when we look at, what potentially government could do to help enable that, I look at, the H2 TCA is the national cluster. New H2 is part of that. So I sort of get this insight as to what's happening around the country in that respect. And I do think that there is more happening in other states to start to look to the future, to map what the skills needs are and map to the detail of even position descriptions that are a great toolkit for emerging industries and companies to be able to sort of map what they need and how to define those skills to be able to target the right resources to be able to fill those gaps. So Queensland government have done a lot of work in that space. Fortunately, it is available and online, so we can actually use it. But we need to be doing a bit more around that here in New South Wales. I think the other important piece that where government can also play a role and where we can start to work between industry and the training providers is also map what is going to be the sector demographics, I guess you would call it, in terms of we have the large projects that will be happening in the region. They will have a big construction opportunities. They are different types of roles to what will be sustaining operations in the future, as well as what will be those firms that will grow as part of the new energy future. And that's a really important piece, because what we want to target here in the region is what are the sector demographics, where will be those opportunities for firms to grow, where will be the high growth firms, and what skills do they need, in terms of looking well into the future to be able to sort of embed long-term industry growth. So yes, there is a lot that can be done.
Leigh, Ashden, can you give us a bit of an insight into what consultation between the port and training providers looks like and how it's meeting your needs?
Yeah, sure. They're probably still early day discussions, but I think where we want to get to is, and this is sort of touching on with some of the other comments already, is that we kind of want to be a one-stop shop here in the region. If you're developing, some of these newer industries, around energy, etc. We kind of want to be seen, globally, and even nationally and globally, the leaders in that space, from a industry infrastructure point of view, but also from that skills and workforce point of view as well. And so, from a port's perspective, we want to establish that here in the region, and do what we can to support that. The governments are sort of aware of our project developments and timelines as well as others. That they've got all that access. They know what the pipeline is for all the renewable projects, with the energy code, with the state government. They've got all that data. They know what's coming, and it's just then, I think collaboration's required, efficient collaboration with various stakeholders. I had a good slide in my prior presentation that I could probably go into detail on this, but it's just good collaboration with universities, the TAFEs, but also key industry partners, even like the Ampcontrols as well, West Tracks and everyone, bringing the region all together and having a potential either centre here in Newcastle or something where even you could bring in those international partnerships to support that as well.
Okay, thank you. We're getting the wind up. Do we have a couple of minutes where we can quickly... 3 minutes. I'll pick 3 people to give a 1-minute statement about how they think the government can best assist the skills transition in our region. And
Take all 3 minutes.
Andy, you've got the mic. Go.
You want to take all 3 minutes? I said no. In short, we're talking about micro upskilling with small courses.
Yep.
Becoming solar accredited, and doing some work with some solar companies is a short course. There is no training facilities here in Newcastle, so investing in some existing training companies that can easily adapt and start here and start the interest level, start the conversation, would be perfect.
Great. Leigh?
So I picked up on Ashton's point about collaboration. I think it's really important that the industry leaders, and it doesn't matter what size organisation, whether you've got 900 or 16 employees, the thematics are the same. They're running, all the themes are still the same from all the organisations, but it's really asking that government to, or bringing those people to the region to understand and see the opportunity and hear the pain points that we've got. And it's not a oh me, oh my situation, because we've all got solutions, we've all got ideas to take on this window of opportunity, but come, listen and collaborate so that we can actually move forward together for the greater good of the country.
Great. And finally, Clare?
Well, I think I probably touched on it before. I think it is about collaboration, it is about being coordinated, it's about being strategic about the you know, the future skills required, how that can translate into the region and bringing about sort of that benefits for the region. Like Ashden mentioned, the one-stop shop. There's no reason why the Hunter region can't have sort of a place for future clean technology innovation that connects TAFE, connects the university, connects research, connects industry, connects significant industry with startups and scale-ups as well. So I think it is about, you know, cutting through the complexity, but actually being practical, pragmatic, creating pathways, clear pathways, mapping what's needed, and then really bringing the right players in the room to bring about coordination and collaboration.